Welcome to Let's Create a Generic Report Web Service in just 4 lines of code. Hey, I'm Eric, and a request I've received a lot of times are, how do I run this specific report, like an invoice or a statement or stuff like that, as a web service, so I can get the reports from somewhere else. And great request, and variants of that is on the to-do list for a lot of customers, that they need to integrate Business Central's reporting capability and document generating capabilities into whatever workflow they have with existing systems. So that's quite common thing to make. But in this video, I'm going to take it up one notch and say, hey, let's create a generic one. And let's do it in 4 lines of code. In reality, there will probably be more than 4 lines of code, but there are 4 essential lines of code that will actually be the service. And let's get right to it and then see how this goes. So here is my trusted old Visual Studio Code. Oops, I don't want to write W there. So we need to expose something as a web service, and I'm old school, so I'm gonna do a, let's see how we need to make this bigger. What kind of keyboard do we have here? We have the wrong keyboard. Let's see if we got it. So web service.al. So let's create a code unit. The report web service. And we're just going to expose this as SOAP. We're going old school today, but we could do OData also, but I think we're going to do SOAP today. So the first thing we're going to do is basically think about how do we want to expose reports to external systems. Well, we need a procedure, and let's call it run report, because why not? So first parameter would be a report number, because we want to expose any report. But most reports doesn't make really any sense to run without we supply them with some sort of parameters. So let's create a parameters variable 2, and we'll just have this one return text, and I'll show you in a minute. So that's a function, and the goal, where the secret to all this is simply that at some point we want to run report.saveas. So let's look at the parameters. Well, it needs a report number. Well, we got that. It needs parameters as a text variable, so a string of request page parameters as XML to use to run the report. The parameters string is retrieved from the return value of a run request page method call. Okay, so we could just supply a string with some XML in. Perfect. Third parameter is a format, so let's just hard code our little thing here to do PDF. And the last thing we want to do is actually supply an outstream. So where should it print to? So that's 1 line of code. Pretty powerful. Let's actually create an outstream. And I know I'm going to use an instream in a minute later, and we're also going to use a temp blob as storage. So the first thing we're going to do, so we had line 1 here, that's here, so let's write another line in front of us saying temp blob create outstream. So if you haven't seen that, there's several videos on streams and stuff like that, but we're creating a temp blob, which is a memory buffer, and then we're creating a outstream, which means that we can write to the buffer. So an outstream writes to the buffer. Then we tell save as here is an outstream, please write your output to this buffer. So at this point, when the report is done, the result of the report, in this case PDF, binary representation of the PDF, is sitting in the temp blob. So now we need to get the stuff out of temp blob again. So we'll use the other function, say create in stream, meaning that now we'll create a stream where we can write the context of the stream and we can write it out. There's a video called in, out, confusing directions, stuff like that. You can find it on the channel. And if you're not subscribed, I suggest subscribing because there's many videos on interesting topics coming up. Anyway, so now we have 3 lines of code. So now we can read the PDF, but we can't really return the PDF as raw data because that's not what we have told. We have told that this is text. So we will create a base64 code unit here, and then because we need to keep this in 1 line, because I promised 4 lines of code, and I'm already at line number 4 here. So we'll exit the base64 to base64, and one of the parameters here is an in stream, and we got an in stream. And by the way, you can see some of the other parameters are with text encoding. So we did that on another video on the channel at some point, and we created a pull request for Microsoft to do that. Anyway, in this case, we don't care about encoding because this is all binary, and we are just converting to base64. So now we're done. That's a generic web service. If we run this function with a report parameter and report number and supply the parameters in a XML format, we can get a report as base64. So actually, let's add another. So normally when you create something like that, what you also need to do is add another file here. I'll call webservice.xml. And I'll just grab it from a screen here. So what you can do here is simply like this. So you can create an XML that has a structure called exported data and tenant web collection, service collection, tenant web service, and tell that this code unit, we want to call that report, and we give the object ID. I think that was the right object ID. Yeah, it was. And we said publish. So as soon as you publish this extension to the server, the line in web services are added. So you don't have to go in and expose this code unit as a web service manually. It's all done by adding this XML to the app. But let's do one more thing here before we venture outside. Let's do get parameters al, and we'll just do what do we want to do? We wanna do a page, right? Get report params, and page type could be card. Layout could be very simple. We're just creating a very simple page here, and I create a variable called report number, a global variable, then I add that to the page. I always add an application area, and then we can do a trigger on validate. And remember when we were over here on the save as, and we looked at the parameters. Let's see if we can do it like this. The parameter string is retrieved from the return value of a run request page method call. Okay, so if we do report.run request page, it needs a report number, and then we can add parameters if we want to. or not. And we must use the return value. So in this case, we can just message that out because we're interested in the XML right now. So let's run this app. And I think I'm just going to run it in a, sorry, let me run it again. How weird, sorry, so you're not seeing what I'm seeing, but I'm seeing that I'm getting, let's just, anyway, it's published. I don't know why it showed up in the wrong browser. So let's look at web services. And we can see that this one has now been exposed as web service. Let's, I did not add a usage category. Let's see if this one will start. Otherwise we'll just use the other browser window. I don't know why. It got all weird on me. There it is. Here is my go-to report whenever I just need to print a report. I also always go for report 111. It's easy to remember, and that's the customer top 10. So now you see I have a request page here, and let me just change that. So I want to see 3 customers. I click OK, and we get the XML. So that is pretty sweet, and I'm just gonna store that on a clipboard somewhere off screen. So now we have all the components. So let's go to Visual Studio. Because I guess that we need to call this web service from the outside. So I'll just do a .NET Core console application console. Let's actually do report client, and I'm gonna put that in projects YouTube report client, something like that. We're gonna do .NET Core 5.0. I'm sorry, this is not the biggest. I can make this bigger in here, but I can't really make Visual Studio bigger. Anyway, so the first thing we need to do is actually just, oh, we had it already opened here. We need to take a look at the SOAP URL. I think I got a user called demo. So we get that we have a function called run report, and that is all good. So let's grab this URL and go back into Visual Studio Code, not Visual Studio, not code. So I will up here ask to, let's see where we want to go, add connected service. We also do a service reference. I think it goes into the same thing. So I want to consume a Windows Communication Foundation web service because we can talk SOAP with that one easily. And I'll paste the URL in here, hit go. We need to authenticate, and I authenticate with my demo user. And we can see here that we got a service called report exposed, and there's a function called run report. So let's call this report service. And I think we can just ignore the data types in here because we're not really working with collections. Anyways, we'll next, we'll just finish and let it generate. So now Visual Studio is basically generating a proxy functions for accessing our run report. method. There are many different ways of talking to SOAP. Now I'm just using WCF. In some of my own things, like in BCCL, I have my own SOAP client, but let's do it with the stuff you guys have. Anyway, we have that connected, so let's save that one. And we don't want to do hello world, we don't care about that anymore. So let's add using, I know I'm gonna use system.io at some point, using, what was it called, report service. So in here, wow, we can create a new client from report underscore port client. But we need to handle authentication. And the way that is done is to supply this guy with two parameters. That's the way I'm usually doing. I'm with a binding and an endpoint. And the binding is kind of telling how to communicate. So we can do var binding equal new basic HTTP binding, and this one needs to be resolved, and it's probably resolved into system.service model. On the binding, we tell on the security, on the transport, that the client credential type. So what kind of credentials are we using? Is client credential type on basic. So we are doing basic authentication right here. And WCF is kind of weird that it only accepts very small messages by default. So it's always, not message version, but it's always a good idea to set the max received message size to something with a nines. And then we need to tell how this how the security is applied. So we're going to do binding.security.mode equal basic HTTP security mode dot transport credentials only. Sorry, this is just long and winding, but it's needed. Because we're not, there's no HTTPS, it's very simple. So there's just the credential is just on the transport itself, not the message inside. Then the other thing we need to supply is an endpoint. And we need to supply an endpoint address. And I need the URL, so I could get that here. And then I need to make sure, oh, did I write a dash? So this one should be happy now. So we got bindings to all the setup stuff. We got an endpoint where we want to talk, and now we need to supply our credentials. So we can do client credentials dot username, which is weird. You want to say our username is equal something, but it's actually username is a struct. So under that, you say username again. We're going to do demo. So client credentials username dot password was also demo. Okay, so now let's look at client dot. We have run report async, which we had run report, but the WCF bindings in .NET Core gives you by default async functions. So we'll run that, and we'll ask to run report number 111, and we'll not pass any parameters right now. But so that one should return a string. but we actually need to await this, and then that will give us some squiggly lines, and we need to make this method async. That means in this case where we only got one thread and no UI and stuff, the await async seems unnecessarily, but it's still needed. So in this case, if there were other threads, stuff that were running UI, stuff like that, we will not create a blocking call here. But since we're waiting, so this is the only thread, so we'll be blocking anyway. Just ignore that in this case. So now we have a result. So all we need to do is do file, write all bytes, and let's call it report111.pdf. And we would do, result dot return value. Yeah, just return value. But this is actually a string. And that was the base 64 string. So we in C# it's very easy. We just do a convert from base 64 string. So we pass a string, and that one returns a array of bytes, which is what write all bytes needed. So with this, let's actually create a breakpoint here. Let's run it and see what happens. This is exciting. Build succeeded. It goes on another screen. We didn't really output anything. So so far so good. We will hit a 10. We wait. We got a call. Excellent. So what's in result? That's really hard for you guys to see, but trust me, that's base 64 and plenty of it. So that is pretty cool. Okay, so I'll just hit a 5 so you can write this one out, and then let me locate a command prompt here. And where did we put this? We put it in projects, YouTube, report client, I think. Yeah, report client. So bin debug.net, and if you guys can see, here's report 111 PDF. So let's take a look at that report 111 PDF. Which opened up on another screen, and here's a report. So we're almost there, right? Remember the somewhere we put in some. So this is pretty cool. We got a report, but somewhere I saved a clipboard of something. Wow. We may need to go and find that again, because here it is. Haha. So let's go back into this guy. Remember here parameters, and also remember, where did we put it? It's gone. Remember the XML from way back in the video. So let me paste that in here. Actually, we're going to move this one, and because this is XML, and let me just mark this and then do Alt-H and replace a quote with a \quote in selection. Then our string here looks fine. So what did we do? Well, we told it to only do a top 3. And if we go back and look at this one, this is clearly a top 5. So let's close this one and run this guy again. and it's running and it's done. And let me go back to this guy and open the report once more. And we got 3. So that's a in less than a half an hour, a reporting generic report web service that can run any report with any parameters. And let's actually just do a quick recap here. Let me find Visual Studio. So what we did was we created a code unit, added a procedure called run report, 2 parameters, report number and parameters, created a outstream, printed the report with that report number with that parameters into that outstream, created an in-stream, read the in-stream into a converted to base64 and returned that on the web service. On the client side, see if I can find, how weird is this? On the client side, we did some housekeeping to actually be able to connect this to a Windows Communication Foundation service, and then we called the report, what number we wanted, and the parameters. So the parameters in this case could be filters and whatever it is, and you see sorting and anything. And that was the idea with the run get the report parameters run request page function call. Anyway, we called report and we saved it, converted it back from base64 into binaries, and then we saved it as PDF. So that's a complete report, generic report service. You might want to add, security or default parameters, or perhaps we want to which would actually, I'm just switching back now here. I'm doing the classic Eric. I think I'm done with the video, and then there's something I forgot. So right now we have hard-coded report format, but maybe we wanna, we can either just expose this as another endpoint and then do run report as Excel, and then we'll do Excel here, and then so now we're actually returning an Excel file, or we want to parameterize report format and add that as a parameter to run report. Options like this doesn't really translate well into parameters on a web service. I have found that the simpler you create the signature for a web service, the less issues you will have with whomever is subscribing to the web service. So I usually try to make these as simple as possible, because then it just works and everybody are happy, including me. Anyway, so that's a way to make it more advanced, and of course you can add security features, or you may want to do a additional authentication or whatever it is, but that's a generic report web service. Hope you enjoyed that. Let me know in the comments below if this is something you like. And until next time, have a wonderful day, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.